being locked in the back of a blacked-out car while the company driver collected my food from restaurants without family sections. The absence of women on the streets, on billboards, on television. In my white privileged world, I had never truly grasped, until this point, the importance of equal representation in media. It seemed that half of life was elsewhere. But truthfully, what surprised me most was how little culture shock I actually suffered. Beyond these idiosyncrasies, daily life continued as usual. I did my groceries at Safeway, I bought my shoes from Marks and Spencer's, I watched movies on Amazon Prime, and my Saudi counterparts did just the same. In short, I was reassured in my conviction that, beyond culture and creed, we all have far more in common than we do apart. That despite what those attention-grabbing headlines would have us believe, Saudi women's primary concerns are not of jihad or patriarchal oppression or the dimensions of the cloth that covers them, but rather of the standard of education enjoyed by their children, the challenges of balancing work and childcare, and, of course, when the next series of The Walking Dead is due to be released. The first few months I lived in Riyadh, I adopted local customs as far as my limited knowledge would allow. I lived in the city centre, not a Western compound. I predominantly covered my face with the niqab, although it is not expected of foreign women. I shopped at souks, marketplaces, learned to cook with local ingredients, and subjected taxi drivers, shop assistants, and students to my broken Egyptian Arabic, learnt through an app on my phone. Despite my efforts, I found I was still at risk of disappearing into the expat bubble, a fate especially prevalent in the kingdom, where family privacy is sacrosanct, and Saudi and foreign workers each reside behind their own high walls. Aware of this, I consciously started talking with local women, asking them questions and listening to their stories. At first, these personal histories were kept as keepsakes, shared only among family and friends, the basis perhaps of a rather unique scrapbook. But even here, I began to notice the humanizing potential of storytelling. My parents stopped calling to ask if I was safe, and instead started asking after my Saudi friends and students. Was so-and-so feeling better? Would that student like some extra textbooks sent out? Or some help with her engineering application? I wished I could introduce more people personally to the women of the kingdom. I began to formalize my efforts. I made contact with influential Saudi women at embassy events in Riyadh and told them of my idea of compiling a book of interviews. To my enormous honor and continuing gratitude, I was welcomed into the homes of senior princesses, members of national councils, and activists whose names I had only seen in newspapers. Although it had only ever been my intention to speak with women with more everyday occupations, given the language barrier and women's more frequent occupation of the domestic realm, this group actually proved far more difficult to access. But I was determined, and as my courage grew, I started to approach market vendors, shop assistants, supermarket cashiers, women waiting at airports or sitting next to me on trains. I called in favors and accepted invites to family gatherings. I was also increasingly aware that I could not produce anything approaching a representative portrait of womanhood in such a large and diverse nation by expending my energies in the capital alone. And so I travelled, often alone, to the far eastern, western, and northern reaches of the country, as well as into the desert, in search of surviving Bedouin communities. Never once on these expeditions did I feel unsafe or unwelcome. Nonetheless, each time I raised the question of an interview, I did so fully expecting to be rebuffed. An unfamiliar foreign woman with atrocious Arabic and full of probing questions. Instead, I was invited into family homes to share delicious local cuisine and stories of lives lived, as in every part of the world, with their struggles and victories, joys